Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, the Glendale City Council is being investigated for possible open meeting law violations. We'll hear from the city's attorney. A new immigration rule allows same-sex couples legally married in other states to apply for a visa and citizenship in Arizona, even though gay marriage is not allowed here. Learn more about that new rule and find out about new methods to reduce radiation from CAT scans. Those stories next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Richard Relison for Ted Simons. The State Attorney General's Office is investigating possible open meeting law violations by the Glendale City Council. Glendale City Attorney Nick DiPiazza is here to discuss the allegations. Thanks for joining us this evening.
My pleasure to be here.
So we say they're investigating. So far what we know is that they've sent you a letter asking you for information, right?
That's correct. On July 2nd, a letter was sent by the Attorney General's Office to the interim city manager, essentially informing us that there were complaints made of possible violations of the open meeting law and asking for information with respect to the incidents that are the subject of the complaint.
Does Glendale know who complained or how many complaints, or if that's citizens, organizations?
The letter refers to several complaints. The details of those complaints are probably a subject best asked of the Attorney General's Office.
And probably one that you didn't care as a city attorney, you just have to give them the information they wanted, yeah?
Sure. The law requires us to respond. We certainly take these matters very seriously. We don't have a history of complaints. So when we received the letter, it was referred to the city attorney's office, and it was my function to conduct an investigation. So the steps that we took essentially were to speak to the council members involved, and we have 7 council members. The allegation was that 6 council members engaged in 3 separate meetings, and also that the city manager also involved himself in a meeting. So I spoke to the people involved, determined what the details of the meetings were, and then also spoke to the last member of the council who did not participate in the meetings, just to ensure that after the meetings there wasn't any cross-discussion which could have resulted in a violation of the open meeting law.
And I guess we should let our viewers know what the open meeting law is. Essentially, if a public body meets, they should let the public know 24 hours in advance what's going to be discussed, what the agenda is?
Well, the open meeting law requires that all meetings of public bodies in the state of Arizona be conducted in open session with some very few exceptions. What the law requires is that an agenda be developed, that the agenda be posted so that people know what is going to be the subject of discussion, and then, of course, the meetings are conducted in a manner where people can be present and observe the proceedings. In this particular case, there were no meetings within the definition of meetings under the open meeting law. Every gathering isn't a meeting.
So what we had, this was Renaissance Sports and Entertainment back in May. They were one of the possible bidders of the Coyotes. National Hockey League was essentially bringing them in to get to know Glendale city officials. Whose decision was it to not have it at a public meeting, to not have all 7 members there and the public there for sort of an informal meet and greet?
Well, first of all, the city of Glendale doesn't own the team. The team is owned by the NHL. The NHL conducts its own process to determine possible qualified purchasers. After their vetting process, which is conducted, again, very privately, they approach the city and introduce the prospective buyer to the city so that the city could then undertake to negotiate with the prospective buyer with respect to 2 things, essentially: leasing the arena and managing the arena. So, on very short notice, the NHL asked to get together with Glendale officials. We're talking about very high level, the commissioner and deputy commissioner, and the stated purpose of the gathering was simply to introduce the principles of RSE to the city.
Did they have, if it was on very short notice, did they have the idea to make it a series of meetings? Because again, it seemed to be there was a meeting with the mayor, another meeting planned with 2 people, another meeting planned after that with 3 or 4. Did they want it to be over the course of an afternoon? Was it schedules that didn't coincide among the council members?
I think that, first of all, they just asked to get together with the City of Glendale officials. They didn't communicate with the city attorney's office, so it was handled by other staff. I think the thought was they wanted to be able to come in, make the introductions, and they had limited time. So our sense was that these introductions had to be made in a very time-compressed period.
But the most time compressed would be everybody together at once.
Yes. The difficulty is that if you were to do that, the appearance would be that there was a meeting within the definition of the word meeting under the open meeting law. There was not going to be a meeting where there were going to be discussions of details, deliberations, any consensus reached, any vote taken. So if there were a quorum, it would present a problem. There would be the appearance that there was an official meeting.
But there would only be the appearance of the meeting if someone wasn't there, but the meeting could have been open to the public, could have been open to the press, and there wouldn't have been a worry about the appearance of it because people would have seen it was just essentially a presentation or people getting together to talk about the weather. So again, was it someone's advice or someone's desire that it be more of a private session?
Well, candidly, the city attorney's office wasn't consulted before the gatherings took place, so I can't say. And I don't have specific knowledge with respect to what the process was. I think the intent was to avoid the appearance of a meeting because a meeting was not intended.
And also, I guess it sounds like to avoid a meeting, to avoid having it be posted in public.
I don't think to avoid a meeting, but to avoid perhaps the appearance that there's a meeting and an expectation by people that business was going to be conducted. There are times when council gets together, not as a council, but just as individuals. For instance, they may go to a public event, and there happens to be...
They can go to a hockey game, yeah.
They could go to a hockey game.
And it looks like here there were no notes taken. It looks like people said there was no real meat discussed. It was essentially a meet and greet.
My understanding was there was no agenda, and I spoke to all the participants. There was no agenda for the meeting. It was just meet and greet. As a matter of fact, that expression was used by one of the members to describe his meeting. There was no agenda. There was no business discussed. I think there were no notes taken at the time. No one indicated to me that they brought notes into the gatherings to read from. And I think it's important to know that at the time, there were no proposals from RSE. It wasn't until perhaps a week or so after these gatherings that the City of Glendale received its first proposal for a deal from RSE, the purchaser.
Right.
So there were no indications, again, that there were any deliberations, discussions about business.
That it was a getting to know you chat.
Yes. I mean, essentially, we were going to do business with this entity and with these people, and before you enter into a $225 million deal, it's probably not a bad idea for everyone to feel comfortable to be able to look into the eyes of the person that you're going to be doing with business with and shake his hand. And I think that was the purpose of the meeting.
And I guess as we quickly wrap it up, the next step, does the Attorney General let you know what they think of what your answer was soon?
Yes. What we did is we responded by letter, and that letter, of course, is a matter of public record, and it was provided to the media. We responded in a timely manner, and now the response and the information in that response will be considered by the Attorney General's office, and they'll decide their next steps.
And again, it wasn't your decision to have the meeting in the manner it was. You advised them on how it wasn't a violation of the open meeting law. I guess we'd have to have the mayor and the council here to discuss why they chose to have it in the manner they did. But
I think it was a staff decision, and I don't know that there was a conscious decision by the mayor or council for this particular format. I think they were informed that these gatherings, there was a request for these gatherings to take place, and they were conducted.
Well, we'll see what happens. Maybe we'll have you back when the Attorney General makes his decision. I appreciate you joining us this evening here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
We want to hear from you. Submit your questions, comments, and concerns via email at arizonahorizon@asu.edu.
U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services announced last week that it will allow people who were legally married to a same-sex person in another state to apply for a visa and a path to citizenship, even though Arizona does not allow same-sex marriage. Phoenix immigration attorney Regina Jeffries is here to talk about the rule. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me.
They announced this Friday. Was this in response to a question? Was there someone who was pressing a case that asked the federal authorities to rule on this?
Well, what happened was in June, the Supreme Court came out with the Windsor decision, which effectively struck down Section 3 of the Defense of Marriage Act, which basically said that the federal government cannot regulate marriage. So as long as a state allows for same-sex marriage, as long as it's legal in that state, that the federal government has to recognize it. And that decision flows down to every benefit under federal law, and immigration is one of those benefits. So what happened was there were individuals who had been attempting to apply for benefits under the federal immigration law previously that had been denied based on the fact that they were in a same-sex marriage, even though it was lawful in a state that allowed for it. So these cases sort of started to come up as soon as this decision came out, and the Immigration Service was putting out guidance so that the agency was aware and their officers were aware that the agency would then have to follow the Supreme Court's decision.
So once gay marriage became legal in certain states, some couples were getting married in those states with an immigrant spouse, then trying to apply for a visa, but DOMA, when it was still in place, Defense of Marriage Act still in place, immigration authorities were saying no because it's not recognized federally. Now that that law's off the books, these people were trying again.
That's correct. That's correct. And in fact, some of the cases that had been denied under DOMA were actually being held by the Immigration Service because some of them were only being denied on the basis that DOMA was still on the books. The Immigration Service held some of those cases, and as soon as DOMA was overturned, began reopening the cases on their own, out of their own volition, to re-adjudicate those cases because they can now approve them since DOMA is no longer on the books and the federal government recognizes a same-sex marriage that's lawfully performed. So
you mentioned some cases that were just being held back because of DOMA. That was the last step. The next thing is now they're just the spouse is allowed in. Their spouse is given visa and a path to citizenship? Yeah, so the way that it would work is that, for example, a really common scenario is someone's, say, attending ASU on a student visa, and they're from another country. They meet someone, they meet the love of their life in college, they are of the same sex, they decide to go and get married in Iowa, which allows for same-sex marriage. Previously, the U.S. citizen could not petition for that spouse to become a permanent resident. But now, with the new Supreme Court decision, that U.S. citizen spouse can now petition for the student to become a permanent resident to stay permanently in the U.S. There's also the option if someone is outside of the U.S., so for example, if they're married in another country that allows for same-sex marriage, like France or England now, they can actually, a U.S. citizen could petition for that person to enter the U.S. as a permanent resident as well. So there are a number of immigration benefits that are now open to lawfully married same-sex couples that weren't before. In your answer, you mentioned 3 places where same-sex marriage is allowed: France, England, and of course, Iowa. Does Arizona have a lot of these couples, do you know? Do you see it happening in Arizona? Oh yes, I've actually been working with a number of couples since the date the decision was overturned, and in fact there are many couples in Arizona that are legally married in other states. California now allows for same-sex marriage as well. So there are many couples that are living in Arizona, residing here, who have married in other states, who are now filing for immigration benefits. That, I guess it would stand to reason, given our proximity to the border and immigration issues here, that there would be more immigrants. Our pool of immigrants, colleges, there's a lot here. When you mentioned a number of cases you've been handling personally, a dozen, 10, couple dozen? I would say, yeah, already at least probably 10 or 12, and more every day. So I think as people sort of learn about the benefits that are now available,
they are realizing, oh, I can actually do this now. And these are people, in many cases, who have been together for almost 20 years as partners, and then have legally married and are just now able to petition for a spouse to stay here as a resident.
And not having you think to when the legislature gets back in January, is there anything the state can do that would put a damper on any of this?
There's really not. I mean, the Supreme Court was pretty clear earlier this year that the state of Arizona really has nothing to do with federal immigration law. And in this particular situation, the longstanding rule under federal immigration law is that a marriage is valid as long as it was valid in the state in which it was performed. So you won't have couples going out and getting married in Arizona because the Arizona Constitution prohibits same-sex marriage, but the state is unable to stop anyone who wants to legally marry in another state that does allow for it.
Right, to go cross the border, cross the border into California or Iowa or France,
Yes.
and bring that certificate back and have it validated not by the state of Arizona but by the federal government.
Right, because the entire process is really a federal process. It's with the federal government. The federal government is granting the benefits. They're adjudicating. The state really has no role in the process at all.
Boy, that Supreme Court decision knocking down DOMA affected many, many small aspects that people probably didn't consider right away. And I imagine, though, for these couples, they probably considered it as soon as the ruling came out.
Yeah.
I appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much this evening.
Thank you.
A team of diagnostic radiologists and medical physicists at Mayo Clinic have been developing and implementing new techniques to lower radiation doses from CAT scans. Doses of radiation have dropped 50% in that time. Dr. Amy Hara, a diagnostic radiologist at Mayo Clinic, Arizona, is here to talk about the new techniques. Thanks for joining us this evening. Well, I guess what would be important about lowering the dosage of radiation? How much radiation does someone get when they get a CT scan or a CAT scan?
Sure. Well, we measure radiation in terms of millisieverts is one common way. So the dose with CT scans can range anywhere from 3 millisieverts to 10 to 20, depending on what type of study that you're getting.
Which doesn't sound like a lot, but of course the media helps scare people. As just looking online, people have talked about it being a mega dose or 100 to 500 times more than an X-ray.
Right, right.
Sorry. Have we helped make people overly anxious or scared of the radiation they get in a CAT scan or a CT scan?
Right. Well, I think that it's very confusing for patients because actually the medical community is divided about the risks associated with radiation. So you have some experts that believe that any exposure to radiation is going to increase your risk of cancer, and other experts believe that the low doses that we use aren't going to cause any increased risk. So that's where the confusion starts. So I think that what's helpful is for patients to be able to put it into perspective. So what I like to tell patients is that we all get exposed to radiation every day in Arizona. So in a year, we're exposed to 3 millisieverts of radiation. That's equal to about 1 or 2 head CT scans or a chest CT scan. And in other places in the United States, like Denver, the radiation is 10 millisieverts per year. And so you can put that in perspective. So if a patient asks me, what's my risk of having a CT of the abdomen, it's about the same as living in Denver for a year.
And I guess what Mayo has done is try to take the argument off the table of how much lower have you been able to make the dosage of
So we've been able
CT
to
scan?
reduce the doses by anywhere from 50 to 70% compared to what we were doing just 5 years ago.
And with just as effective imaging.
Right, correct, right.
How is that possible?
So I think a good analogy is when you take a picture with your camera, and if it's a little blurry or not too bright, you can take it on your computer and you can brighten it up and you can sharpen it. There's similar technology with CT scans that have developed in the past few years that allow us to do the same thing. So we can take an image at a lower dose, it may not be quite as sharp or bright, but we can use computer techniques to make it better.
So a lower dose image, maybe a less crystal clear image, and then you're able to sharpen it sort of in
Right,
the
you can
lab,
pull
or-
the information out to make that image even better so it looks just like a higher dose exam.
And I guess people, I mean, we're looking at what looks like a CT scan. People also might associate that with an MRI. I mean, there's an industry that's cropped up for people to try to avoid the CT scan, right? Because of that.
Sure. So there's other different imaging tests available like MRI or ultrasounds that don't use radiation.
But doctors prefer CT? Is CT preferable for certain things like cancer?
Sure. For certain indications, CT is the best test. For other indications, MR may be just as good or even better. So it really depends on the question with the patient that you're looking for.
But making the dosage 50 to 70% lower
Right.
then makes it more of a medical issue and not a, I scared myself by reading this on the internet issue.
Right, correct. So we consider ourselves advocates for the patients to do what's best for the patient. And so we're going to minimize the dose as much as we can for our patients in case there's an increased risk, which is very controversial.
How long has the team been working to lower the dose? How long has this work been
Since
going
about 2008, we've been actively involved, and Mayo's really on the leading edge of reducing radiation dose and educating the community, educating patients and other physicians about how to do it.
Is this as low as it can go? Or?
No, I expect that in the next 5 to 10 years, those doses will become even lower. So people want to make it about the dose of a chest x-ray or a couple chest x-rays. That's really where this is going.
And again, taking the fear off the table.
Correct, right. Because CT is a life-saving test and patients shouldn't be afraid of it. So we're trying to minimize their concerns as much as possible.
Excellent, yeah, so that they can hopefully diagnose and get things done early.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Dr. Hara, thank you for joining us this evening.
Sure,
Perfect.
thank you.
Many kids in Mesa are spending the summer learning about recycling. The city recently held 3 free workshops to teach children and some of their parents about what can be recycled, how to do it, and where it all goes. Producer Christina Estes and photographer Scott Olson show us what's involved.
It's Club Blue, Mesa's Young Recycling Squad.
Members are on a mission to protect Mother Earth.
If we don't recycle, the whole world would look just like brown and gray, like in old movies.
First, they see what happens when people don't recycle.
This stuff was actually buried in 1965, so way before you guys were born. We actually uncovered it in 2008. And if you look at it up close, you can actually read on some of the newspaper.
This is what nearly 1,000 styrofoam cups and lunch trays look like after being melted for 7 hours.
On the day that they did this, it was actually Taco Tuesday.
That's all grease right there.
Mariano Reyes explains what happens when people don't just toss things into trash cans.
We recycled the can today. Within 45 to 90 days, we could have a brand new can. What do you guys think this is?
Grass.
Well, it's not grass. It's it's money. So do you guys know that the government actually recycles money that's no longer being used? So this is an example. What they do is they shred it up, and then they can make it into other things like insulation. So they actually can put this in insulation that might be in your home.
So what happens to the items we put in our blue barrel?
Jennifer Clevenger believes these workshops and school programs are a big reason Mesa has a 32% diversion rate.
We're the highest in the state. Diversion rate is everything that has been diverted from the landfill and gone to be recycled.
These students often turn into teachers at home.
I've noticed even in a couple of my workshops that the kids knew what went in the blue barrel, and the parents kind of went, really?
So, who can tell me what this is?
Both parents and kids are pretty impressed by this 40,000-pound machine.
It's a garbage truck, and this is one of our operators.
They discover a typical route involves picking up about 1,200 barrels, and then they get a front row seat.
Grab the steering wheel. There you go. Now pull yourself on up.
It's cool and it's high. I'm not used to being high trucks, but it's cool to feel it too.
They're feeling pretty cool inside, too. Showing off picture frames they decorated and sharing lessons learned.
They need us to recycle in order to survive. If you didn't recycle, through time itself, like all time, future, past, every time, well, nothing would be, it would smell really, really bad. Recycle more and throw away less.
Club Blue launched last fall and already has more than 300 members. Wednesday on Arizona Horizon, we'll hear about plans to reduce haze over the Grand Canyon and find out about an EPS plan to charge more for residential solar power. That's at 5:30 and 10 on the next Arizona Horizon. Thank you for joining us this evening on Arizona Horizon. We'll see you tomorrow night. Have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.